Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Today I'm going to be talking about the very interesting and somewhat wonderful comic from Action Lab Entertainment called Stray. This is the trade paperback version of the which collects the 4-issue miniseries. This is Stray, Who Killed the Doberman? This is by Vito Delsante, who is the writer and the letterer of the series. The artist is Sean Izaakse. And we have a couple colorists here. Ross Campbell, who did colors for the majority of the issues, 2 through 4. But he only did the flashback colors for issue number 1. I'll talk about that in a little bit. With Simon Gough doing the modern colors for issue number 1. And also John Morris is credited for doing the design. There are a bunch of artists who did covers for this book. For the main covers, let's see, Dean Haspiel did the trade cover for the book. And let's see here, Mike Norton did issue number 1. And like I said, I'm talking about the main ones. Sean Izaakse did 2 and 4. And Chris Cross did cover number 3. So like I said, this is a 4-issue miniseries, and I remember seeing this on or in previews when it was first being solicited as the limited series, and I passed on it. I was intrigued because of the focus on the character is a former sidekick to his father, the main superhero. And it's a play on the whole Batman and Robin thing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit too. But as I looked at the issue with the kid who's dressed as, it's a dog theme instead of a bat theme or bird theme, and the guy carries a bone-shaped truncheon, and I thought, this looks a little too much like parody, and I'm not all that interested in parodies of sidekick stories. But I kept an eye on it, and then I finally saw the trade being solicited, and I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll give it a shot. And I wasn't too disappointed about it. Actually, I was not disappointed. There were just a few things about the story that bugged me, and I'll talk about those. Let me just read you the text on the back of the trade, which reads, "A dead hero, a killer at large, and a former sidekick that has lost his way. When the Doberman is found murdered, his son and former sidekick must come back to the world of masks and heroes to find his father's murderer in this coming-of-age tale of redemption and identity." From the author and the artist, A Hero Goes Stray. See what they did there? Let's see here. Here's my little paragraph-long summary of the series. So Rodney was the Rottweiler, the sidekick to the Doberman, who was his father. Doberman is killed in the story, and Rodney investigates his estranged father's death with the help of Detective Brooks, who ends up being another superhero character called The Theory. After Rodney solves the case, he continues on as the Stray. By the way, if you haven't read this series and you don't want certain things spoiled, because this is a mystery after all, you might want to go read that and then come back and listen to this and follow along. Okay, rather than doing basically a summary of every issue, I'm just going to go through the things that caught my eye, that I liked, and some of the things that I didn't necessarily care for. We'll see how that goes. I tend to talk too much about these things, and I want to try something a little different today. Speaking of a little different, this audio is being brought to you by a new microphone that I'm trying out. So hopefully it sounds good. Let me know if you like this sound better or worse in comparison to what you're normally used to hearing from me. Anyway, on with the story. So this is Stray. So this is a Batman and Robin analog. as I mentioned before. You even have the pointed ears, sort of like Batman's cowl of the Doberman. Rottweiler, Rodney, is dressed in, or his ears on his cowl are kind of floppy-eared. So interesting take on that. There's also Justice League or Avengers-like characters. Mostly the analogs in this story, and there are more than just the Justice League. There's also Teen Titans-esque type characters, which appealed to me very much. But I kind of looked at these characters as more DC instead of Marvel. You have a Wonder Woman-like character, a Superman-like character. There's a Question-like character, and that is the Theory. And then there's another one that I don't know that's ever identified by name in this story. And so my question in my notes here is this supposed to be Black Canary? Because it kind of looks like her, I guess. Anyway, so we are introduced to the Doberman and the fact that he's training his son to teach him how to protect himself, and because Doberman can't lose his son too. And you find out that the Doberman lost his wife. His wife was killed in a traffic accident, or was she? So that's the flashback, and then we get into what is going on in the more modern setting, and this is where the homages start. So Doberman is killed just like the comedian was in Watchmen. So he's picked up by the bad guy and thrown out of a window of a high-rise, and he is indeed killed. Later we see a face mask that is reminiscent of the smiley button from Watchmen. There are references to familiar superhero comics tropes from DC and Marvel. Someone makes a reference to a character being two-faced, and that becomes a very big thing here in the story as we go on. Another, a normal person, a non-superhero character, says something about Avengers assembling. Another makes a reference to Up, Up, and Away. So I wonder, does DC and Marvel comics exist in this universe? So these people are familiar with superhero characters, but and make direct references like that to them. But there are their own superheroes within this universe. So I just kind of thought that was interesting, and interesting in the sense that they are so specific about these references. Let's see here. Rodney, nowadays, after he has stopped being the sidekick to the Doberman, he is a club promoter and also deals in what's called G-Smack, which is this drug that makes you feel like you can do anything. And so, for example, an acquaintance of Rodney's, I think in the story, he's referred to as his girlfriend, but he tells the cops that he barely knew her. Anyway, she's on G-Smack, and then they're up in the club, but it's several stories up, and she basically steps off the ledge because she thinks she can fly. This is where Rodney also references his superpower, and I put that in quotes in my voice because Rodney says that his body eliminates threats like drugs and toxins, etc., which means that he can't get high and he can't get drunk, or too drunk anyway. So basically, the stuff just is expelled from his body, which is very useful in his line of work. He remarks. There's a scene in this issue where another club promoter runs across Rodney and decides to try and take him out because they're ticked at him that he's always taken all the people away. So he goes around promoting these various clubs and ends up taking all the people who would normally go to these other clubs, and they go to the club that he's promoting, mostly because of the G-Smack. And I forget now what G-Smack stands for. Hold on one second. Yeah, it's called God Smack. He talks about it. You get smacked. So wait. The thing is, once you get close to whatever it is you get close to, once you're ready to touch the sun like Icarus, you get smacked back down to earth hard, hence the name. Anyway, like I was saying though, there's this really cool scene that the artist did. It's this one page. Well, basically it's 2 pages, but primarily there's a splash page showing the confrontation between Rodney and this other club promoter and his goons. And basically, the guy just pulls a gun and starts shooting at Rodney. Well, Rodney is basically does a backflip, jumps over this pool table, and then somersaults around this little bar that they're in, and escapes outside while this guy is shooting. And then he basically it's to show how acrobatic he is, so to prove that he's still capable in his, I think he's in his early 20s. Anyway, there's another scene here towards the end of the confrontation where he vaults off of a car and somersaults up onto the building ledge, and then he runs off up the fire escape to get away, which, he's supposed to be a normal person, but he's able to do things like Robin, but that's pretty impressive for a guy to be able to jump like that. And of course the goons are making comments about this. One guy says, are you seeing this? And there's a pedestrian saying, "Wow, look at that guy go." There's also some interesting little dialogue in that scene in the bar where the guy starts shooting and Rodney starts doing his somersaulty thing. One guy in the background, and so this is one of the things I liked and also didn't like about the composition of this page. So the action of the page looks really cool. Like I said, it's a splash page, but you see these multiple images of Rodney as he's jumping around doing his thing. Well, here's all these other characters who are reacting to the situation, and so you kind of get these static dialogue, or bits of dialogue on the page. One guy in the background says, "Gun, get down." Another one is huddled down on the floor next to a jukebox, and he's saying, "I hate this city." There's a couple that's behind the pool table, and the woman is saying, "I'll marry you on one condition. We're moving." And the guy says, "Deal." And I just thought that little bit right there just kind of bugged me a little bit. This humor that seems out of place for the situation. I mean, yes, it's funny, and I understand. I get that. I get the humor, but it's just, like I said, it just seems out of place. And there are things like that throughout this series. Anyway, there's a scene with this detective Brooks. There's more to this guy than meets the eye. So Rodney gets arrested after the girl commits suicide by G-Smack. And this detective Brooks realizes who this kid is. And so he plants a device in the observation room of the cops, and then activates it with a pen that blacks out the precinct so he can talk to Rodney confidentially. And this pen it's got a little timer on the side and everything. So obviously this guy is not just a cop, but you don't know exactly what his deal is until later. And then the issue ends with this really dramatic. Again, the issue ends with a splash page, and Detective Brooks reveals to Rodney, "Your father is dead, and someone has killed the Doberman." And the way that it's presented is, like I said, it's a splash page. It's a close up of Rodney's face, and his mouth is wide open. He's very surprised, and you got these lines coming away from his face and head. Normally those are action lines, but it's more like I'm not sure exactly what this page is supposed to be doing, other than showing the surprise, this utter shock of this news to Rodney. And the dialogue is just, it's just bombastic. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. Even the lettering is bombastic. Your father is dead, and the word "dead" is in big bold letters in the dialogue box, and the bit that the someone has killed the Doberman is in it's rather large text too, and it's all in red. So it's like I said, it's very over the top. Also during this issue, the references to the number 2 keep popping up. Like I said before, someone makes a comment about someone being two-faced. Someone has 2 hunches. They make a reference to the Gemini killer. Face to Face is referenced in dialogue, and it's also the name of this TV show that keeps popping up throughout the series. So that has an impact as we go on. Another interesting point that's revealed in this world or in this issue, this world has superheroes that are registered and working with the police. There's also a domestic vigilante unit, the DVU, and so I found that interesting. There's also another reference to the comics. Doberman responds to a 616, and so I thought, well, is that a reference to Marvel Earth? But that becomes problematic later, and I'll get to that particular 616. So what it does reveal, like I said, is that there's the DVU, and Doberman actually responds to calls that the police would normally deal with. So I found that interesting. I did mention this before. This issue has 2 colorists, which speaking of the references to the number 2 in the book, I thought that was interesting. I'm sure it was not planned that way, but anyway, so there are flashback sequences that are colored. They're more lighter, they're brighter than the modern narrative. The modern stuff is a bit more dark, and the color palette is less broad, if you will. And I like that. I thought that was a really cool way to do flashback sequences, but then they dropped it for the rest of the series. It doesn't really detract from the book overall, but I just found it curious that they did it that way, and I would like to know why they dropped that. Maybe the colorist wasn't available, or the schedule wasn't right. I don't know. I don't really care other than my own curiosity, but I kind of would have liked to have seen that duality continued on in the rest of the series. Okay, issue number 2. My notes here, I have puns, ! There's a lot of puns here. One henchman tells Rottweiler, "I hate puns." And let's see here. Yeah, so Rottweiler is, this is a flashback sequence. Rottweiler is trying to save his dad from the evil guy who has the Doberman in a death trap. You know that stuff that happens to superheroes all the time. Let's see here. So Rottweiler shows up. He says, "Sorry, I'm late. A dog ate your homework, namely me." He also says, "So who wants to get detention?" And that's a pun because the bad guy here is the professor, and his students are his teenage henchmen, one of which is dressed up as a football player, and even says, "Blue 49, smash the Rottweiler on 2, hut hut." I mean, come on, that's really silly. Let's see. Rottweiler also says, "I'll see you 2 after class," and that's when the football guy says, "You know what I hate? I hate puns." Anyway, speaking of duality, this is a book. So this is an element of the book that I like, and also it kind of bugs me a little bit, but it is what it is. Then we get to the obligatory funeral scene, and Rodney's there, and so is Detective Brooks, and the Superman-like character shows up hovering, and this design is really cool. So it's multicolored. It's got it's a red and crimson suit with white highlights and gold accents on the boots and gloves, and he's wearing a blue cape with a hood, which I thought was an interesting design choice. So I really like that design. But I read through this series 2 or 3 times, and I could never find what the name of that character was. So I'm just going to refer to him as Super Dude during the rest of this. So Rodney sees the guy there, and he flips the guy off. So I'm thinking, what the heck happened in the past that Rodney is so ticked at this character, this Superman character, Super Dude? Rodney tells or talks about how he and his father had a falling out, and they haven't seen each other in years. I found it interesting, an interesting narrative choice that the creators here did not show that scene at this point. I would have expected that from any other story, but they don't. So we get told about it. So that's part of the thing that I don't like about the series. Sometimes it's a little too much telling and not enough showing. Then the references to the number 2 come back. There's a quick scene of 2 people talking as they're walking along this lake shore or the beach. I'm not sure. One says, and when they say 2, yeah, we are looking to get a Rottweiler. One of them says, and instead of it being spelled T-O as it should be, it is the number 2. And again, that's one of those things that bugs me. When people use numbers to be a word, it only works visually, and so I just question why they do that. Other than to be cute, and I don't care for that in writing in general. Not that cute anyway. It's like it reminded me of Brother Eye in what was it? Well, when Batman was dealing with Brother Eye, and he kept, what was it? I can't remember the series now where that was a big part. Anyway, Brother Eye kept referring to when Brother Eye, or when I said refer to him itself, he said I, but it was always spelled E-Y-E, as in the body part I, and that always bugged me in that story too. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The third character in this scene that I'm talking about here calls. So he's a guy walking his dog, and the other characters ask him, well, what kind of dog is it? And the guy says, it's a Rottweiler. A little too on the nose, don't you think? And the Rottweiler is called Deuce. So there's another number 2 reference. So I thought that was a little heavy-handed there. Anyway, so now we go back to a scene between Rodney and the Super Dude. Super Dude tries to give Rodney's dad's what Super Dude calls his will, which Rodney then tosses away and tells him he can't. Oh, and then the Super Dude Rodney tells him to leave him alone and to get out of here, but Super Dude tells him he can't go away yet. But it's funny that we don't see this character again for the rest of the story. So again, one of those odd details that I felt that the writer kind of dropped and shouldn't have done so. The next scene is this is a cool thing. Here are the Teen Titans analogs. There's a speedster. There's an arrow guy, a vaguely oceanic character like Garth. Aqualad. There are 2 women. One reminds me of Wonder Girl, and the other one I'm not sure who she's supposed to be. Rodney hasn't seen them in 4 years, we find out, which is, I guess, how long his dad and him have been estranged. The arrow guy yells at Rodney about the G-Smack thing, which are shades of Teen Titans Speedy and his addiction, sort of. Rodney goes to the Doberman's Batcave, which is referred to as the kennel. See, again, I like it, but I don't. I mean, it makes sense within the world, but it's just like, eh. Then there's this 4-page fight scene that seems like filler, other than to show Rodney admitting that he missed beating up bad guys, I guess. And these are guys that stole the Dobermobile. Although I'm not quite sure. Oh yeah, so he's in the kennel, and then this alarm goes off because one of the guys bribed, I guess, an impound person, and they were able to get the Dobermobile from the police, I guess. Anyway, another cool thing about this issue, there's this visor program. So in the Doberman's cowls, it records the audio and visuals of his patrols, and so Rodney goes into the bat cave or the kennel computer and is able to see what happened when the Doberman was killed. This is where we find out that Doberman was responding to a 4595, even though in issue 1 there's a reference to him responding to a 616. So maybe there are two different instances here, but it was odd enough that it struck me when I was reading this, and I wasn't sure what if 4595 was some sort of reference like 616 is, or maybe it's just maybe there is such a thing as a 4595 in police work. I meant to look that up and I did not. Brooks tells someone that he has a theory, and this is the point in the reading this book where every time Brooks says something about having a theory, you should take a drink. You might get mildly drunk from that. Rodney does get the letter/will from Super Dude, whose name is Jared, I guess, but I still don't know what his superhero name is. Although I'm not sure how he did, because I think the scene is back in the kennel, and the scene where Super Dude gave this originally to Rodney was outside, and Rodney tossed it away and walked away. So maybe Super Dude came in and left it. Let's see here. In the letter, Doberman states that you always admired him more, meaning the Super Dude, which is why he gave Super Dude the letter to give to Rodney. I thought that was an interesting take on the whole, like the Superman-Batman relationship, and with Dick Grayson, him being Nightwing, taking on that Nightwing persona when he did in the New Teen Titans. I'm talking about the blue Nightwing suit, where it was a combination of Batman and Superman, because Dick Grayson takes the name of Nightwing originally because that was a story told to him by Superman of a Kryptonian hero of that same name, but Nightwing takes on the black and blue suit as a tribute to his mentor. So I always thought that was a really cool meshing of these two very important men in Dick Grayson's life. And so we get a similar situation here with Rodney and Doberman and Super Dude. The letter also makes a reference to I hope you, meaning Rodney, will think about joining me again. But this is one of those things about the story where I'm like, I don't get it, because Super Dude references this letter as Doberman's will, which is not something you give to a family member if they're still alive, but yet Doberman wants Rodney to join him again. So join him in spirit, maybe, I guess. It's just too much of a stretch for me. These inconsistencies just kind of pull me out of the story, which is why I'm bringing them up. There's a scene, though, where up on the computer screen, there's the Doberman's Rogues Gallery. I always like that whenever I see things like that. Let's see here. There's the Devil Bat, Tusk, Mr. Macabre, Hate something. It starts with an SH. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. Nurse Scorn, and the Boogeyman, which is a really cool design. So I like it when we get, again, these analogs of characters that we are familiar with. So issue number 2 ends with Rodney donning the new Rottweiler outfit his dad made for him. It looks more like the Doberman's, only a bit more modern. So it was a nice upgrade from his teenage Rottweiler costume. So good design there. Still has the floppy ears. Okay, issue number 3. This is where we find out some names of some of those characters. The teen group that Rottweiler used to belong to. Supersonic is the speedster. Astria is, I think she's kind of like the Wonder Girl character. We find out that Rottweiler had a huge crush on her, and that he had a bit of a dark side earlier in his time as Rottweiler. Apparently, there was a run-in with some villain group. Astria was hurt, and Rottweiler decides to take on that entire group all by himself as some sort of payback. And so he's telling this to one of the other teammates, how he could not control his anger, and basically asks his teammate, what's wrong with him? And to which I respond, you're a teenager? Because that's what happens when you're a teenager. You get these uncontrollable urges to beat people up. Or maybe that was just me. I don't know. Later at the police station, Rottweiler wants time in the interrogation room with Mr. Macabre to question him. And so Brooks basically convinces his superior officer, his captain, I guess, or lieutenant or whatever, to go ahead and let him. Although I'm not sure why. But Macabre tells Doberman that Doberman's rogues feared him, yet they needed him. So I thought that was similar to how Batman's villains need him as well to try and prove themselves or win in some way, get one up on Batman. So basically, Mr. Macabre was telling Rottweiler that none of the usual rogues had anything to do with the Doberman's death. Astria shows up. Apparently, she works for the federal government now. She apparently has Rottweiler refers to it as a truth stare because he won't look at her, and she calls him on it, and basically he doesn't want to tell her how he's really feeling about the situation and her, apparently. So again, this is where I think that Astria is like Wonder Girl. Instead of having a lasso of truth, she has a truth stare, and I don't know how literal to take that, or if that's just she has that kind of power over him, emotionally. So I'm not sure. Anyway, the number 2 is back. Rottweiler says the Doberman was found on February 22nd at 200 Greenwich Street. And we also find out that Doberman and the man who was walking his Rottweiler, Deuce, on the beach, he was killed in that first issue, or in issue number 2. They were both killed in areas having 2 in their name. So there you go. The number 2 plays a big role in this series. And we do find in this issue that the killer is revealed, and we've been getting hints about him throughout background TV reports throughout the first 3 issues. It turns out his parents' last name is, this is French, and so I apologize to any French-speaking listeners out there. I think it's pronounced Jumeau, which I've looked up, and it's spelled Jumeaux, and so that is French for twin. And their parents' names, I guess, are Thomas and Martha, or at least the English equivalent of Thomas and Martha. So you get that's Batman's parents' names. So I thought that was an odd choice too. It's a play on that, but this is the bad guy. Anyway, so that's issue number 3. Issue number 4 opens up 5 years previous. So this is the fight. So where I referenced where I thought we should have got the flashback to the fight between Rottweiler and Doberman, we actually get this fight in issue number 4. So it's been 4 years since Rottweiler left. So apparently Rottweiler wanted to let this thief go, who Rottweiler says only wanted to feed his family. Doberman objected, and of course, as things happen, usually between a father and son, especially as the son gets older, things escalated, and Doberman grounded Rottweiler instead of fired him like we've seen multiple times throughout the years between Batman and Robin. Rottweiler decides, you know what? You can't ground me. I quit. And he runs away. This is where we find out that Rodney is 20 in this story, in the modern time. So he's been on his own since then. He also makes a reference in, I think it was issue 2, to his Teen Titans group, whatever they were called. How after he quit being Rottweiler, he spent that time 4 years on his own, and that was his reason, his excuse for getting into dealing G-Smack, which I thought was an odd thing that never really went anywhere other than that reference to it. You know, it being a thing in the first issue, and that reference to the group. Let's see here. In that flashback, there's a quick panel as Rottweiler leaves his father. You know, there's actually a couple panels I want to talk about here. So Rottweiler leaves, slams the door, and then there's this lone little panel at the bottom of this page, and it shows Sam, who is the pet of Doberman and Rottweiler, and it's just him in silhouette, except for his collar is red, but all you see is the silhouette of the dog, and he's kind of hunched over. He's upset. He's sad. The poor dog. He's sad. The next page shows the next morning, and Doberman goes to Rodney's room, and that's where he finds out. He sees the note. He finds out that Rodney has left the building. He's left the partnership and run away. And there's a scene at the bottom of this, or a panel at the bottom of this page, where Doberman Dad is on the floor, and he's saying, "What have I done, Sam?" Talking to the dog, and the dog again is there, you know, commiserating, and you know, it's just sad. Those two panels featuring Sam the dog, very sad. Anyway, so this is where finally we get the theory, who we found out is Detective Brooks, spells it out for us and for Rodney that Jumeau has been doing TV interviews saying the same thing over and over. It's a code. So every second word of what he's been saying forms a message for Rodney. And that message is, we did it. We killed the Doberman. Next we will kill the Rottweiler. Let's make it fair. You can find our hideout on Ward's Island beyond Hell's Gate. Find us. So Rodney, of course, goes to do that, but decides to do that, but before he can, the Teen Titans guys show up. And this is also where we find out the names of some of these other characters. The Arrow guy is named Orion, which I thought that was kind of cool. And he's got a vaguely Arsenal-esque look about him, but it looks still pretty cool. Oh, I said supersonic before. It's hypersonic. Hypersonic is the name of the speedster, the Kid Flash character. Sea Lord is the name of as I said, the vaguely oceanic character. And there are two other characters here that Rodney does not know. Apparently their names are Dharma and Quarry, or Quarry. And Quarry has the ability to form, I think, stones, or a stone skin. So kind of like the Thing, sort of. So there's a scene there where basically we're here to help you. Rodney doesn't want their help. Quarry has a bit of a temper, and he and Doberman get into a fight. And Doberman, even though Quarry has these rock powers, and he even says, "You're about to get rocked." Oh my God, the puns continue. Anyway, Doberman basically hands Quarry his butt in the fight, and Astria says, "Will you to Orion? Will you do something before they kill each other?" And Orion says, "Way ahead of you," and then shoots an arrow, or a dart into Rodney's neck, which knocks him out. Some time passes. It's nighttime later. I'm not sure how much time passes, but I thought it was interesting. So Rodney talks about his superpower, about his body being able to shrug off the effects of toxins, but apparently not this knockout drug, whatever it is that Orion shot him with. Maybe it was a really high dosage. I don't know, but it again, an odd contradiction in the story. Regardless of that group's efforts, Rodney does confront Jumeau, calling him Duet. I'm not sure why he did that, because there was no indication that Jumeau was calling himself that. Anyway, but that's the character's moniker now, Duet. There's a reference to in previous issues where Doberman's body was found, but his body was drained of blood, and Rodney, demands to know why Jumeau did that, and Jumeau doesn't tell him. He says he has a reason for it. So I'm thinking, and we never do find out why. So maybe it's something for a sequel series. Anyway, they fight, and things look grim for Rodney. He gets run through by Jumeau's sword, or Duet's sword, and gets strung up, another death trap type thing. But Rodney's able to get out of it, of course, and almost kills the guy. He says, "I was never the man my father was, but it's not too late to start trying." And so Duet lives. He's in jail, and Rodney goes to visit him. And that's where we find out about the blood thing. And then I thought it was really funny. So Duet has... I should have described this before, I apologize. So Duet is basically two people in one body. So they kind of explain it as they were twins, but they shared one body but two minds. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like a schizophrenia thing, and someone was sensationalizing it as if they were actual physical twins that somehow merged in the womb. That's kind of how I took it. Anyway, Ronnie says, "So there are two of you in there inside your head?" And Duet says, "We." And no, we may occupy the same body, but we are two different men. And here's the number 2 being used instead of TO. And so Rodney responds, "Then why do you have such singular purpose?" Now that I did like. That was a nice dig to the guy. And Duet reacts. He gets this angry look on his face, but then calms down and says, "Aha, you're very funny too, number 2. We have the same purpose, but as individuals. We will kill you, and you will always be next." Okay, so I forgot to mention, you will always be next. So the reason Duet had such a hard-on for Rodney was that he's the one that it was an accident, but it started him on his path of murder. Duet is the person who killed Rodney's mother, and that was one of the things that helped to split up Rodney and his father, because Doberman always felt like the mother was murdered, and although maybe I got that wrong, maybe Duet did intentionally kill his mother. Hold on, I'm gonna look that up. Yeah, so in the earlier fight scene, it says Duet says Emily was our first. That was an accident. We didn't mean to kill her, but there were 2 lives taken that day. Truly, Emily fueled our obsession. We had purpose. 2 kills, 1 for each of us. Your father's death will now be completed by your own. So that's his raison d'etre, right? So he has to kill 2. He's Duet. So I'm not sure where if he accidentally killed Emily, where was I think there was a reference to another person being killed, and then he killed Doberman, and so therefore he had to kill Rodney, I guess. Like I said, I've read this a couple of times and I'm still a little confused on some things. Okay, anyway, I love the little dig, like I said, the singular purpose thing to a guy who is Duet. And at the very end, of course, Rodney is talking to the Theory and decides that he will continue. "I'm the product of the heroes around me, but I'm not one of them. I'm the prodigal son returned, evolved. I am the stray. And that is the end, ... for now, as it says at the end of the issue. So there you go. I like this better than I thought I would. Even though I have kept pointing out all of the things that kind of bugged me about the story. Overall, I enjoyed it. I really like the aspect of the examination of a former sidekick coming into his own. I like the callbacks to familiar things in the Batman mythos and other comics. I like that structure. I like that history. There's a few rough spots in the story, like I pointed out, but I really enjoyed it. If they ever do a sequel, I probably will read it. I also liked how in this trade paperback, Action Labs included the covers and also the letters pages for the issues. I thought that was kind of neat. And it was a good thing too, because some of the letters pages included the credits, like the cover credits. When I was preparing my notes for this, it was really hard to find the stuff online, and finally I just happened to look and to see if the stuff was listed somewhere in the issues themselves, and indeed they were. So that was a good thing. But you know, if anybody from Action Labs is listening, enough with the ads in the trade. My gosh, there were like 3 or 4 pages of ads in between every issue. Now, I understand why you want to do that, but man, it was really distracting and kind of annoying, I have to admit. Although, again, here's the duality of my comment. At the same time, there was an ad for Midnight Tiger, and I kind of want to read that book now too. So, you know, their plan worked, but at the same time, I was slightly annoyed by it. So there you go. That is my really quick look at Stray, Who Killed the Doberman. I'm looking forward to seeing more of this character. The whole action verse event that has started. It started in November with Actionverse number 0 from Action Lab Entertainment, and I believe in I don't remember if it was the February previews. There was a solicitation for this Actionverse series that they're doing, where they're getting characters together from the various books that Action Lab does, including Stray and Molly Danger and some others. So I'm really looking forward to that series and more from Mr. Delsante and Izaakse as far as Stray. If you've read Stray and have some comments about my thoughts on the book, you can always let me know or by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, or you can hit me up on Twitter at longboxreview. Or maybe if you decide to go pick up Stray, it's on Comixology if you want to read digitally, or you can go pick up the trade if you can find the issues themselves. Any of those ways, and you decide to pick it up and read it because of my commentary. Let me know what you thought of it. I'd appreciate that. That is it. I will be back to talk about another book very soon and some other things I've got planned along the way. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.